Alright guys, I'm trying to get a whole bunch of stuff done today. I'm putting away all these shed antlers that I found this year. I had a really good year shed hunting. I ended up picking up 42 antlers. I probably find maybe around 35 a year, so a pretty good year for me. Picked up some of my best sheds this year. I definitely had a lot more time than I normally do this year, and I put a lot of miles on, a little over 600 miles, and I scouted a lot of new ground. So it was a really good time. Really, I got a few antlers here that I wanted to show you guys, but I really just wanted to show you these two. Both just great deer, absolute giants. I know absolutely nothing about this buck, and I know quite a bit about this deer right here. So both absolute studs, and the crazy part is they both really have potential to be the new typical state record. This one's a little bit more of a stretch, but I'll get back to these and I'll tell you why I think it has a chance. I'll start with this little guy right here. So I know this antler doesn't look like much at all, but I have tons of pictures of this deer. Super young buck, a lot of character. He busted off. He had a kind of a big inside point that he busted off right before he dropped this. He has the drop tine on the other side. So I'm just really looking forward to keeping tabs on this deer over the next few years. Hopefully he just keeps surviving. I just have this weird feeling he's going to turn into a giant someday, so we will see. We'll go with this one right here. This is just a really cool shed hour. I think it's cool. Big bladed main beam. I hung a camera on this property in the late season. I had never been there before. And I got a cool trail camera video of this buck. So I just went over there to see if I could find this deer's antlers. And I was pretty excited to pick up this one side. So I'm sure I'll never hunt this place or even hang a camera there next year. This area got hammered with EHD like 3 years ago, so I don't think it's really even fully recovered yet, but pretty cool shed. We'll go with this really cool match set here. So I did make a video and I was gonna put it up on YouTube of shed hunting this year, but I think I'm gonna hold off until next year, maybe like around December or something, when people start getting excited about shed hunting again, because there's so many guys that recognize these properties, and I know people would recognize this place right here. But I picked up this deer's antlers. I love big 8-pointers. A lot of character on this buck. Huge brow. He would be like a mid 150s 8. The cool part is I found these antlers right in his bed, actually on 2 separate days. They're like 15 yards apart from each other, and I went back the following day and I can't believe that I missed it. But so I'm really looking forward to seeing what this deer turns into. I hate saying that this would be an easy buck to kill, but I really think this would be an easy buck to kill. So I mean, this bed here is in the typical spot. Everything just sets up perfectly for this buck. He's looking right down the pipe at the parking lot. I prepped the tree for this deer, and I really don't want to sound like an antler snob here or anything, but I don't know if I'll end up ever hunting this property or hunting this deer. Hopefully he puts on a few more inches here. There's just so many good bucks out here that we'll see. I mean, if he puts a brow on this side like this one, it looks like he wants to, so we'll see. Definitely going to be excited to see what he looks like next year. We'll go with this one here. So this is a really pretty cool story here with this buck. So I know this property pretty well. I was going in to shed hunt for the first time. It was like the second time this year. I think it was like February 8th. And I was driving down the road, and on the crop fields on the other side of the road, I saw something laying out in the middle of this field. It was like it looked like it was a dead dog or like a dead animal or something. So I looked at it through my binos, and it was like a piece of garbage. So then I happened to scan over with my binos, and I see a a big antler laying on this side of this hillside, or what I thought was a big antler. It turned out just to be this real little, like 115-inch buck. But anyways, I walked down the road to the farmer's house and asked if I could walk his ground, mainly to pick up that antler, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't care, you can walk all my ground." So I go in there and I end up jumping 7 bucks when I was back there that were like bedded out in this ditch in this field, and they all had their antlers. One of them had dropped aside, but so I'm like, well, I picked up that antler. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna get out of here and I'll come back at another time. And on the way out, laying in the alfalfa was this giant antler. And a little backstory here with this place. So I was hunting this huge buck this year, and a couple of my buddies were as well. He was probably like a mid 180s buck, maybe even a little bigger. And I met these guys actually hunting this property. Well, he totally fell off the map in like mid to late October, and we never heard of him getting killed, or we never saw him again. I never found him dead, so I have no idea what happened to this deer. But so when I first saw this antler, I thought it was from that other buck, because this deer lives a pretty good ways away from there. We started getting pictures of this deer in late September, I believe. We always called him the 160. We'd get pictures of him sometimes, and you're like, oh, he looks like he's a upper 150s buck, and then like once in a while we get a picture and be like, hey, now he looks like he's a booner there. But he turned out to be way bigger than we thought. He is all of 160. This deer, I got this little score sheet right here. He went 79 6/8. I mean, huge. So he'd have been like a 178. Super symmetrical. The state record typical is I believe it's a 192 6/8 bull buck. So this deer would definitely have to, I mean, it's kind of a stretch. You'd have to put on a little over 14 inches, but if he puts on this G5 here, if he puts on say 3-inch G5s, maybe, and you could definitely put on some mass. His mass measurements are 5 2/8, 4 4/8, 4 2/8, and 4. So, I mean, he has, if he puts them on his brow, he really could be right in the ballpark. He wouldn't have a ton of deductions, but the thing is, so in the late season on this property, I was pulling cameras, and I cut a track in such a strange spot, and it was going away from like all the crop fields. So I left the camera there to see what deer that was, because this track was so giant, and it turned out it was this deer. So where I found that antler was really important to me, because it started to connect a lot of the dots. Usually I don't put a lot of stock into where I find a shed antler, just because a lot of times these deer are nowhere near where they're at in the fall, where they are in the winter. But the thing is, this property is hands down the hardest property I've ever hunted in my entire life. I mean, this place will make you pull your hair out. Trying to decide how I want to hunt this damn buck tonight. He's seriously driving me crazy. But I wanted to see if I could see where that Hmong squirrel hunter jumped that buck out of last week. I'm pretty sure this is the bed right here. I don't think he uses it very often, but it's a decent setup here. I really wish that I could show some topo maps of this place, and some of the places where I've jumped some of these giant bucks and where I've gotten pictures of some of these deer. Well, I just jumped that buck for the second time this weekend at 15 yards. Just because I think it's like would be the greatest learning tool for guys that are really serious about hunting hill country. Unbelievable. I just jumped that buck again. It's not like it has the craziest elevation changes or anything, but just the lay of the land and how everything sets up. It's like it was built for deer, for bucks to get really old. It held a 200-incher a couple of years ago. So many big deer out there, and there's huge properties around this place that get almost zero pressure, and all these big deer are on this property, which gets quite a bit of pressure. So I do think this deer is killable, though. I'm excited to see what he turns into. I did a lot of prep work for this deer, so I'm hoping that big deer that disappeared shows up, but I would definitely be happy to kill this bad boy. And now this deer right here is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, look at this thing. He went, what was it? 84 1/8. Insane. I mean, I don't know what his other side looks like, but let's just say in a perfect world, it's exactly the same. He's 20 inches wide, has 0 deductions. He would be 4.5 inches, around 4.5 inches from the state record, typical. Insane. I mean, I know he's gonna have deductions, but I mean, you look at this thing and you're like, where can you even put on 5 inches here? But I did have a camera on this property that I put out in the late season. I never scouted it or anything. I think I actually hung that camera in the dark. But I really wanted to check out this other side of the property. I think it was in April, and there's like a little sliver of south-facing hillside that looked really good, looked really shedsy on the map, and I cut through the whole property. I didn't even look for any sheds. I went right to that little spot in the CRP, and I was probably there for a minute, and I saw this big old pedicle sticking out of the CRP, and I just could not believe it.
Oh my God.
I doubt I will ever find a bigger typical antler than that right there. He might, I mean, I don't even know if you can tell how big. Oh, I have a soda can here. He might look a little spindly, but he's really not. I mean, look at this thing. Just absolutely giant. So, I mean, his mass measurements are 5 6/8, 5 2/8, 4 5/8, 4 2/8. So he definitely could put on a little bit of mass. I mean, maybe a little on his brow, a little on his main beam, and I mean, that's all it would probably take. So I really don't think this buck lives on this property. I mean, obviously he spends some time there, but I found this antler right away when I got there, so I had the whole rest of the time to scout that place, and I think I found just a little bit of this buck sign. There's definitely a lot of big buck sign out there, but so we'll see. Hopefully I get some pictures of this deer next year. It's pretty exciting. So I mean, for the guys that are, you know, thinking that they need a huge chunk of private land to, you know, kill a deer like of this caliber, I mean, it's definitely doable to find these deer. You just really have to look hard. So I am awfully excited about next year. I feel more prepared than any year. So I'm also pumped for you guys to see the shed hunting video. I think it turned out really cool. So I'll probably put that up in the early winter, so keep an eye out for that. Hopefully I have one of these big slobs killed by that time.